I've always been a huge fan of old movies, the kind you can't find on streaming services or even Blu-rays, the kind that take you back to a time when cinemas were palaces and films were treasures. So when I heard about a vintage movie theater reopening in our small town after years of being abandoned, I was psyched. The grand opening was supposed to be a special screening of some classic horror films, my absolute favorite. The theater itself was tucked away behind overgrown trees and thorny bushes, like something out of a fairy tale. Its sign flickered sporadically, as if undecided about whether to fully light up or not. My excitement overrode any nervousness I felt about the state of the place. After all, it was just an old building, right? What could go wrong? I bought my ticket from a disinterested teenager who didn't even look up from his phone. "Theater 3 down the hall and to your right," he mumbled. As I made my way down the darkened corridor, I couldn't help but notice how everything seemed stuck in time. Dusty chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the red carpet looked faded but regal. Settling into my seat, I was almost giddy. There were only about a dozen people in the room, scattered among the aging velvet chairs. The curtains drew back, and the screen flickered to life. Vintage horror film posters flashed across the screen as old-timey music played. I was in heaven. But about halfway through the first movie, I began to feel uneasy. I couldn't put my finger on it. It was like that sensation you get when you're alone in your house and you suddenly feel like you're being watched. I glanced around the theater and saw that others seemed absorbed in the film. Shrugging off my unease, I turned my attention back to the screen. That's when I noticed it, a shadowy figure standing in the back of the theater. I squinted, trying to make out the details. Was it an employee? Maybe the projectionist checking on things, but the figure seemed off, too tall and too hazy, like a smudge on a photograph. My gut told me to get out, but curiosity rooted me to my seat. Suddenly, the film on the screen glitched, turning to static for a moment before resuming. The shadowy figure was gone. I sighed, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. Then the whispers started. At first they were soft, almost drowned out by the movie's dialogue, but gradually they grew louder, more persistent. I looked around, trying to figure out where they were coming from. That's when I realized the whispers seemed to be coming from the screen itself. "Look behind you," the whispers said, but the lips of the characters on the screen didn't move. The other moviegoers were still focused on the film, seemingly unaware of the eerie whispers. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I wanted to run, but it was like my body was frozen. I could only muster the courage to slowly turn my head. My eyes widened with horror. The seats behind me were empty, but each had an old, faded photograph on it. Photographs of people, their eyes scratched out and mouths gaping in silent screams. My heart pounded as I realized these weren't just random pictures. I recognized some of the faces, local missing persons who had disappeared over the years. My gaze moved to the seat beside me where my jacket rested. Underneath it was another photo. It was me. My eyes were scratched out, just like the others. Panic surged through me, finally breaking my paralysis. I bolted, stumbling up the aisle toward the exit. The screen flickered again, and a chorus of ghostly wails echoed through the theater. I didn't look back. I crashed through the doors and into the lobby, startling the bred teenager at the ticket counter. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, my breath fogging up the windows as I fumbled to start the engine. I floored it, my tires screeching as I peeled out of the overgrown parking lot. I never went back to that theater, and it closed down a few weeks later, this time for good. I don't know what I saw that night, and I don't care to find out. But one thing's for sure, some movies are meant to be forgotten, and some places are best left abandoned. I still love old films, but I watch them from the safety of my home now, always checking behind me, just in case.
I never liked going to the movies alone, but when Sarah bailed on me last minute, I thought, why not? It was Friday night, and sitting at home watching Netflix sounded way too depressing. Riverview Theater was the place we usually hung out. It was old but had character. They showed a mix of new releases and classics. Tonight, it was some obscure horror film. Eclipse of the Soul, it was called. The cheesy poster showed a silhouette of a man standing in front of a full moon. Good enough for me. As I walked in, I noticed the place was almost empty. A couple in the back, a few teens in the middle, and an older guy sitting alone. I chose a seat at the side, trying to stay somewhat close to the exit. You know, just in case the movie was a total bore. The lights dimmed, and the projector flickered to life. The film started, its old-school charm immediately pulling me in. But as I looked around, I noticed something weird. Everyone else in the theater was eerily still, eyes wide open, staring at the screen like zombies. I shrugged it off at first. It's a horror movie, right? People get entranced. But as the plot unfolded, a guy being hypnotized to commit awful deeds, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I even pinched myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Nope, wide awake. I decided to get up and stretch my legs, maybe grab a soda. No one else moved, not even an inch. They were like statues. Even the couple in the back, who were so lovey-dovey when I walked in, were now separated by an invisible wall of tension. When I got to the concession stand, the guy behind the counter was also acting strange. He looked dazed, like he'd seen a ghost. One Coke, please?" I said. He slowly handed me the soda, never breaking eye contact with the screen behind me. I turned around and saw that the lobby TV was playing the same movie. Was this some sort of promotional stunt? I hurried back inside, Coke in hand, and sat back down. I felt like running, but also didn't want to look like an idiot if this was all some prank. The movie was reaching its climax. On screen, the hypnotized man was about to commit his final act. I held my breath, waiting for some sort of resolution. Then, the projector went dark. A sigh of relief washed over me, but the rest of the audience remained in their seats, staring at the now blank screen. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't right. I had to get out. Just as I stood up to leave, the projector flickered back on. But it wasn't the movie this time. It was a live feed of the theater. I could see myself on the screen, Coke in hand, looking terrified. "Katie!" A voice echoed through the speakers. It was low, almost a whisper. My heart was pounding out of my chest. "Why aren't you like the others, Katie?" I sprinted for the exit, stumbling over my own feet. I reached for the door, yanking it open, and ran straight into the parking lot. My car was the only one there, aside from a black van parked in a far corner. Ignoring it, I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking like crazy. As the engine roared to life, I peeled out of there as fast as I could. I never went back to Riverview Theater. Heck, I didn't even watch a movie for months after that. But the creepiest part? A week later, Riverview Theater was closed down. Word got out that they found hidden cameras all over the place, even in the bathrooms. But they never found out who was behind it. The staff had no memory of that night, like they were all in a trance. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if I had fallen under that movie's spell. Would I be like the others, lost in some mindless void? I guess I'll never know, and that's what scares me the most.
I always liked the movies. Something about escaping into another world for a couple of hours really did it for me. So when I got a job at the old Paramount Theater downtown, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. The Paramount was one of those old-timey theaters, you know? Red velvet seats, golden accents, even a friggin' chandelier. But it was usually empty. People liked their newfangled theaters with recliners and whatnot. Not me, though. The Paramount had character. But that place was a bit weird, too. My boss, Mr. Thompson, was an older dude who kept to himself. The only other employees were Sarah, the ticket girl, and Jake, who helped with concessions. Mr. Thompson had only one strict rule. Never go into Theatre 3 after midnight. Structural issues, he called them. I didn't think much of it. One Friday night, Jake calls in sick, and Sarah says she's got a family emergency. So it's just me and Mr. Thompson. The last show ends around 11:30 p.m, and Mr. Thompson tells me he's stepping out but will be back to lock up. He repeats his rule about Theatre 3 and leaves. I start cleaning up, but curiosity starts gnawing at me. What's the deal with Theatre 3? So I decide to break the rule. I grab my flashlight just in case and head in. As I walk down the aisle, the air feels colder. I shine the flashlight around, and it's just an ordinary theatre. Seats, screen, exit signs. No big deal. Feeling a bit relieved but also kinda disappointed, I'm about to head back when the projector flickers to life. What the... I mutter to myself. Old-timey music starts playing and black and white images dance across the screen. It looks like an old silent film. A man and woman are having a picnic. Kinda cheesy, but then things get unsettling. The couple looks directly into the camera, their faces twisted in fear. Then the screen goes black, but the music keeps playing, now slow and warped. Chills run down my spine. I turn to leave, but the exit doors slam shut, one after another. My heart pounds as I try to pry them open, but it's no use. I'm trapped. That's when I hear it. Soft whispers coming from behind me. I turn around, and the theatre seats are filled with people. No, not people. Shadows of people. Dark figures sitting in the seats, as if watching the film that's no longer playing. My flashlight flickers, then goes out. I'm in total darkness, the whispers growing louder, filling the room, coming from all directions. Then, suddenly, silence. The screen flickers back to life. Now it's showing the theatre I'm standing in from the back of the room, and I see myself on the screen staring at the projection. Then I see something else. A dark figure rises from a seat in the back row on the screen. Slowly it starts walking toward the screen me. I'm paralyzed watching this unfold on screen when I remember I'm in the theatre alone. I spin around and shine my dying flashlight toward the back row. For a split second, I catch a glimpse of a dark figure before my flashlight dies completely. Panic overtakes me. I lunge for the doors again, throwing my whole weight against them. They burst open, and I spill out into the hallway, gasping for air. The lights come on, and Mr. Thompson is standing there, holding the master switch. "I thought I made myself clear about Theatre 3, he says, his voice calm but stern. I quit that night. No 2-week notice, no farewell. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I still love movies, but these days I stick to Netflix. I can't shake the feeling that those shadowy figures are still out there in Theatre 3, waiting for the next screening. And every time I pass the old Paramount Theatre, I can't help but wonder what might have happened if I had stayed in that room alone in the dark. So let this be a lesson to you. Some rules are better left unbroken, and some theatres are better left unvisited. As for Theatre 3, well, let's just say it's one show you don't want a ticket to.